It is clinch time in the NFL this week, and some people are just not made for it. Some of them just decide not to play, and some of them do get pulled for other players. So we'll talk about that as well as the clinching scenarios for this upcoming week. I am your host, Ed Smith, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. Welcome, everybody. This is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I'm your host this evening, Ed Smith, and with me is Thaddeus Lloyd.
Hello.
How's how's it been in your side of the planet, Thaddeus, with the 49ers out there?
I am sad. I am deeply saddened. Uh,
Yeah, I see that there are some things to talk about with them, and really we do got to get into this De'Vondre Campbell situation. What are you hearing about this?
so I've seen for a while, and I've been following some of the 49ers reporters this year. And I do remember some of the first weeks of the season, it began cropping up De'Vondre Campbell. There was something about it. And it's like, he wasn't, in the first couple weeks of the season, we were beginning to see he's not that great of a linebacker. Now, De'Vondre Campbell, he's his eighth year in the league. He had a really good season. He had an all pro season 3 years ago with the Packers, but then he was just released. They didn't give him a new contract. He was just released from them after last season. And the Niners needed to replace and fill a hole that Dre Greenlaw had after he tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl. He was going to be out for most of this season, and he was. And so they needed to fill that hole. Like, hey, De'Vondre Campbell, why not come down? But then things started cropping up about maybe some potential character issues with Campbell. And then, of course, it resulted in last week where Dre Greenlaw finally comes back from his Achilles injury, starts the game, but then he gets injured again during that game. And so the Niners are like, okay, De'Vondre, can you come back and play for us? And he just flat out says no, and he walks off the field, almost Antonio Brown-esque style, if you remember that. And people are wondering, like, what the heck is happening? Well, there have been some examples of De'Vondre Campbell not being the best teammate. Now, when he had his all-pro season in 2021, he was really good. But then the next 2 years in Green Bay, he obviously was not as good, or else they would have given a new contract. He was not as good, and he blamed his fellow teammates in the scheme as reasons why he wasn't doing as well, which is a pretty bad look, I'd say, on a player. If you're a great player, you're going to be great no matter what. But he blamed the coaches, blamed the scheme, and he left Green Bay, kind of with that face, trashing the team. Comes to San Francisco, and then in midway through the season, he was complaining that he wasn't getting as much snaps as the next linebacker behind him, D. Winters. And he was like, oh, I should be getting more snaps. That was another red flag that popped up. And then it just culminated when Dre Greenlaw came back. And he's like, we need you now. Actually, we actually need you. And he's like, no, I don't want to. You didn't give me the. I thought I was the starter for most of the year. Now you want my help right now, and it's like no. And so he just leaves. And I think it's just a big character problem with him. We've seen it a couple times, like I mentioned, Antonio Brown, and some of these players, we expect them to be adults, but some of them just can't be. Like because obviously he's a man. He's got a family, But at the same time, with most NFL players, they spend their money, almost all their money right away. It's like, no, they don't save it up. And when they don't save it up and they're not going to get a new contract because Campbell wanted, presumably to stay with the Niners and, get a new contract because he thought he was the starting linebacker. Well, it's just not going to cut it because he already used all the money. So he's just going to start pouting now about it. So that's what I saw. That's what I heard from the season about him. And another interesting note I found out about this, I was actually watching the Sunday night game where they got obliterated by the Bills in that snow game. De'Vondre Campbell, I believe, this was the PFF ratings. He was this rated 76th out of 79th linebacker in the NFL. Yeah, he wasn't playing great. If he would have been playing great, yeah, this might have been a different discussion. But he wasn't even doing that great. He was horrible. I remember watching this year. He was horrible in pass coverage, and he was barely okay in the run game. So it was just not a great look for him. And some stuff has been popping out, like there might be issues with the Niners locker room. I don't think that's the case. You got like veterans on there, like George Kittle and other veterans on there, but it's just not a great look for De'Vondre Campbell stepping out like that, especially with the kind of bad season he was having.
Yeah, and I am seeing that the Niners on a business side, because this has become a business decision on their behalf, they're they are choosing to suspend him instead of cut him, because that in turn will actually save them $800,000 on his contract, because they can start asking for some of that signing bonus that he was granted for his
Yeah.
1 year contract. I believe it was a $3.35 million signing bonus, and saving $800,000 of that just by suspending him, because nobody's going to pick him up on waivers. And even
No.
if they did, that would mean that the 49ers would be on the hook for that salary, even though it's dead cap money on their behalf. So there's some business side of this that he's just not seeing for himself. And it is just totally messing up his value, his money, and his future in the NFL. He blamed it on, from what I saw, he was blamed it on knee tightness of some sort. Well, if you have that big an issue, you tell the trainer that tells the coach, and the coach is not going to have you go into the game.
Yeah,
That's
the
simple as
big
that.
ridiculous the big ridiculous thing was that he didn't tell anybody, any of the coaches before the game. He suited up for the game, and if you're gonna suit up for a game, you're gonna
Mhm.
want to play, right? That would be the assumption. You can't just tell them mid game while you're suited up, oh, I'm just not gonna play. I got this tightness. That doesn't happen you're unless you know beforehand that it was gonna happen. So yeah, it just wasn't great.
No, not real great at all. And considering some of the other issues that we've seen from this version of the 49ers, which has not been the top flight that we had seen the past couple of years, with Debo and his, uh, would you say, pass catching deficiencies this year? Uh, be-
Yeah, yeah, he just because the funny thing, he goes on social media, I want the ball, give me the ball. Well, Brock Purdy throws, one of his probably the best pass of the night against the Rams, passes it right into it, breadbasket, with Debo. If he has the ball in his hands, he can go for the touchdown, but he just flat out drops it. And and then his struggles on the night continues because, he's being put at running back like he used to be, but I believe he only had 3 carries for like 2 yards that game, which is it's just ridiculous. And now he's not completely washed like some people say, but he's nowhere near his all pro year that like Campbell he had in 2021.
yeah. So after 14 games, they're 6-8. They've got less than 1% chance of making the playoffs. I mean, don't you just pack it in at this point and start looking at the the talent further down the depth chart that you can develop going into next season?
Yeah, you could do that, but the problem is now is the big thing is now the rumors have come out of Brock Purdy's contract, and it's rumored that Brock Purdy wants the 60 million, and that's a pretty big ask, especially from what we saw the last couple games from him. Like now it's pretty much a fact that he can't play in like weather conditions. Like the Rams game, it was raining, like slightly raining. He him and Matthew Stafford struggled as well, but he didn't make the mistakes. Brock Purdy had that horrible interception with 5 minutes left, and the Rams just ran down the clock the rest of the game. That was a bad pick. And then the snow he's proven he can't play in the snow games. Like when they play in a weathered game, they end up scoring like 10 or under points, and that's just not what a franchise quarterback should be. Like 60 million. So they do have a bit of a problem on their hands because he wants the 60 million. But then you have the other rumors that just came out a couple days ago because you saw, we're going to talk about it later, but Kirk Cousins got benched and he might potentially be a trade target or a free agent. And, Kyle Shanahan worked with Kirk Cousins over a decade ago. So that might be a thing. We could also just let the contract play out itself. He's got one more year on the contract. So they have a lot of hard decisions coming up. Yeah, even if they try at the end of the season, it's 0.1% chance to make the playoffs right now. Like it's pretty impossible. So
Yeah, yeah. And when you're talking about hard decisions that need to be made, that begins and ends with the quarterback position. So we are seeing some teams just say, you know what, we're not gonna make the playoffs. We're just gonna ride out the rest of the season, but we cannot continue to do it with our current starting quarterback. So there are some benchings that are going on in the league this year. I mean, this week. And the first one to talk about is in Tennessee. Will Levis, Mr. Mayonnaise himself. He is finally, taking his seat uh, in place of the old man Rudolph. Uh, Mister, I'm gonna get smacked in the head with my own helmet, Rudolph. That guy.
oof,
Uh,
yeah.
uh, and it really comes down to, if you can't take care of the ball, you're not gonna play. As a quarterback, that's your job. And from what we've all seen out of Will Levis has been pure inconsistency, because you'll have games where he has no turnovers, he'll have zero interceptions, he'll have a couple of touchdowns, but then like this last week, we'll have zero touchdowns and three interceptions. I mean, overall this year, he's working on the uh, Jameis the Jameis Winston ratio, which is even. Same number of touchdowns, the same number of interceptions. He's working right on that. But you have to add in, he also has 8 fumbles to his name so far this season. That is not the that is not what happens to a quarterback that's progressing. And that is what Tennessee needs. They need Will Levis to progress. Is it an offensive line issue? Partly. Is it the fact that Derrick Henry is no longer in Tennessee? That's part of it too, because Derrick Henry is, definitely a security blanket by just hand the ball off and you're good, that type of thing. But when you lose 6 of the last 7, you got to make a change. You've got to sit the guy down and say, look at what you're missing out here, and see it from a different perspective. And that's why you make a move like this, don't you think, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I definitely see that, and yeah, this is just this is bad quarterback play, and no one. I mean, it was funny for a while because he was, especially with Will Levis. You had a meme every week. You had this, and then you had this, and it happened every single week consistently. But then at a certain point, you got to be like, okay, you suck. I mean, that's literally how it is. I mean, you cannot have that many turnovers. I mean, yeah, like you said, it was just super inconsistent. Like you would win against the Texans, leader of the division, and then you lose to the Jags. It's like it's just unacceptable. You cannot have that with this league, and people, like I said earlier this season, like owners uh, and head coaches are getting more impatient nowadays, and you just don't see a lot of long development periods, and it's just kind of a win now mode. So it makes sense why he would be benched because it just statistically and as the team has gone, it's just not been very, very productive at all.
But Thaddeus, he was supposed to be top 4 pick in the draft.
Well,
It was just happenstance that he wound up in the second round.
yeah, well, he had mayonnaise in his coffee, so automatically second round.
I mean, what what's next? Does he have jelly in his? I don't know, in his gumbo. Yeah, that's ugh. Sorry.
Yeah.
But then we move on to the next team that has done that, and that's the Cleveland Browns. And Thaddeus, who's the most popular player on any team?
Popular player.
Yep, who's the most popular player on every team?
It's the quarterback, right?
It's the backup quarterback.
Oh yeah, there you go.
He's the guy that everybody's clamoring for when the starter is screwing up. I mean, we've already seen it with uh,
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson. Jameis Winston was the most popular guy. Well, he became Jameis Winston again. So now Dorian Thompson Robinson, who's been there for longer than any other quarterback on the roster, has been the most popular guy on that roster. I mean, what have you seen from DTR to make you think that he could be the guy to finish out the season strong for the Browns?
I actually don't know if I've seen much from him. He's shown up in spots. He had a good game his very first start, I believe, when it was against the Ravens, and I believe they won that game. But he really didn't do much. And the past couple of years, he's spotted here and there because all these other quarterbacks are coming in and they're flying out of Cleveland because no one really wants to play for the Browns. And I just haven't seen as much. I would personally would have stuck with Jameis. Just why not? Like why do it? I mean DTR, he might. I think he might be like a better locker room kind of guy. He seems like a quiet, nice young man. But I just would have stuck it out with Jameis personally. It's just like why not? He's not injured, and he was up and down. But how else are you gonna get you know scoring over 30 points? Like DTR, I don't think has thrown for more than 2 touchdowns in a game yet. So I don't know where this is gonna get them. Maybe they can see if DTR can stay on the roster and be their backup quarterback for the next quarterback who comes in after Watson. But I this is kind of just a weird move to make for me in my opinion.
Yeah, DTR, I think, shows flashes. Like he could be, uh, for the old school people out there, a Jim Jensen, who was Dan Marino's backup, but he played as like a fullback type. Just get him on the field and he'll go make a play. That type of player, but he's not going to be the guy to run the offense. That kind of player. So, I I think this is a move that Jameis Winston. He's probably not going to be there next year. Just stick with the guy that's going to be the locker room guy to get you over the finish line for the rest of this season, which has been a disappointment for the Browns because we had expectations for the Browns this year. I don't know how great an expectation it was, but there were expectations for them. It certainly what isn't what it is now. I mean, losing 5 of the last 6 games, That's not what we expected out of this team, especially with that defense. This is a organization that is basically ruining careers, Hall of Fame careers. They did with Joe Thomas. They're doing it with Myles Garrett. I mean, come on, try and figure something out as an organization. But, you know, going from one organization to another, talking about the Falcons, you alluded to this one earlier, and we'll probably dive a little deeper into this one. Kirk Cousins who was just signed to $90 million, is being benched after 14 games for the number 8 draft pick, Michael Penix Jr. Now, Kirk Cousins' game has always been play action pass because that frees up the vision for getting down the field. And you could see that with Minnesota for sure, especially in that offense that now Sam Darnold looks like a world beater in. And Kirk Cousins, had to move on from it because of that particular contract situation. And he's just not doing the job. I mean, in the last 6 games, he has 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions. That is horrific quarterback play. And it just goes to show that for every good of Kirk Cousins, there is bad. And that's why people tend to claim him as a mid quarterback, not the quarterback that is worth $90 million, $100 million every time he gets a new contract.
Yeah. They call him the money bag man because he's in his entire career, he's won 1 playoff game. Mm-hmm. And that was, he won 1 playoff game. And it was a good game, but he got a massive bag from the Falcons just for winning that 1 playoff game. And because he consistently puts up these good, not great, but very consistent numbers every year. And no matter what it is, I think someone called it the Kirk Cousins effect, where no matter what happens, he's going to stay at 500. So every single season, he's going to throw 30 plus touchdowns, over 4,000 yards, but his team's only going to have 8 or 9 seasons. And that happened a lot the past couple of years. But this year with the Falcons, him coming off the Achilles, and just I don't think this offense is really suited for him. Like you were saying, like it's predicated off the play action. It's like a weird shotgun play action. And it just doesn't fit Kirk Cousins' style. Like what you were saying before, in Minnesota, they have under center play action, dip down, dip under, get it out there then. But with this weird shotgun thing, and I don't think it works for Bijan Robinson either, who's a phenomenal back. And it's just not working out for him. And so they're turning to Penix. And this is probably one of Kirk Cousins' worst seasons. And they're turning to Penix now because they know everyone knows exactly what you're going to get with Kirk Cousins. And this season has not been great in total. Almost more interceptions than touchdowns this year. So they turn to Penix because they're losing the division. The Buccaneers are now Kirk Cousins had almost career games against the Bucs both times. But since they've lost all their other games outside of the Bucs, they are now losing this division. I believe they're a game behind the Bucs now. So they need to start yanking some chains in that locker room. And this is a big move that they need to make in order to see, what they have in Penix and to see if they can still win this division.
Yeah, and it's so weird to say that with being back just 1 game, the division is completely out of reach with having Kirk Cousins, the experienced quarterback, under center or in shotgun, as you said. And it isn't like Kirk Cousins doesn't have weapons to throw to. As you said, Bijan Robinson. You've got Kyle Pitts out there. You've got some wide receivers that are, as a collection, might be better than what he had in Minnesota, less Justin Jefferson. I, he's got weapons to work with. He's just not seeing it. And you saw him uh, on interviews Wednesday that were basically, I didn't forget how to play football. Well, let's look at the tape. I mean, because it kind of looks like he did. It kind of looks like you stayed up. You stayed up too late going to Ross to pick up your next wardrobe, with, you know, and
Get some more khakis.
yeah, get some more khakis and polos, and you know maybe some gold chains to wear on the airplane, that type of thing. Uh, but yeah, I think that this was a move that wasn't quite, I don't want to say unnecessary, because there's still hope to be in the to win the division. But if you are that quick to pull the trigger in doing this move, you weren't going to keep him around for that entire contract to begin with. So that's where these trade rumors of San Francisco come into effect, because I don't think San Francisco needs a dynamic playmaker under center. They need somebody that can distribute the ball with backs and scat players and tight ends down the field, and maybe one or two wide receivers. Should Brandon Ayuk, stop whining. Uh, that's the type of quarterback that they need. Is Brock Purdy the guy to do it? And is it going to be worth $60 million a year? I'm with you. I don't think Purdy is worth $60 million a year, um, but that's just my opinion. I don't think Kirk Cousins is worth that either, but it would be a nice story to have him, kind of ride off into the sunset with a Super Bowl trip with the San Francisco 49ers, uh, because Kyle Shanahan can work with mid to below mid quarterbacks, see Jimmy Garoppolo, and make it to a Super Bowl. What say you?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, because I remember there was, well, actually, yeah, now I just remembered. Uh, this was 5 years ago, I believe. Yeah, so this was, I think it was around the time they were thinking of, this was before they got Jimmy Garoppolo. And like, man, Kirk Cousins is going to be a free agent. And there was big talks like, oh, Kirk Cousins to the Niners, who he worked together with under Washington. And it didn't happen. Kirk went to Minnesota. Jimmy signed with the Niners long term. Well, long term, you know. So it didn't work out. It might happen again this time. I'm still not quite sure. I think Kyle really does like Brock Purdy. Like, he's a really good quarterback, but just not $60 million is probably the thing.
Yeah.
So it depends. I don't know what's going to happen. I think they are going to keep Brock. They should keep Brock, but it is a little tempting because especially they need a backup quarterback. Like ever since Kyle Shanahan's gotten there, they haven't had a backup quarterback. Like because you right now you have Brandon Allen and Josh Johnson, but Brandon Allen is ahead of Josh Johnson for some reason, and he didn't look that great versus the Packers. Before that, you had oh no, sorry, not Josh Johnson, Joshua Dobbs. Before that, you had Josh Johnson, comes in the NFC Championship game, doesn't look great at all. In fact, he was so bad. Well, he got hurt as well, so that wasn't great either. At the time, I remember I was wondering, Niners should have signed Phillip Rivers before the start of the playoffs. It would have been one more ride for Phillip Rivers, and he could have done a better job, honestly. So, at what,
Yep.
40, 41 years old, that would have been the best story of my life, but, that never happened. He actually got some calls from the Dolphins to do it, but the Dolphins didn't want to. They stuck with Skylar Thompson because Tua was hurt that year as well, entering the playoffs. But needless to say, I think it is possible it might happen. But if it were to happen, I think they would keep Brock as the starter and then Cousins would be the backup. That's just my thoughts on it if it were to happen. But it would be interesting if it did.
Yeah, it certainly would be. And you know what else is interesting? We've got games coming up this weekend. It's Merry Clinchmas. Let's get in. Let's look at some of these matchups. And the first one to start off, we've got tonight's game, Thursday night. Broncos at the Chargers. And right now, it's looking like the Chargers are the favorite in this by 3 points. Statistically, the Chargers are favorited in this. Thaddeus, are you seeing a reason why they shouldn't be?
Yes and no. This is going to be a tight game. Both these teams have good head coaches. I love me some Jim Harbaugh, and I was a little bit of critical of Sean Payton earlier in the year, but it looks like he's gotten the team around him. It looks a lot better. That defense way improved since that 70-point game the Dolphins laid on them last year. Way improved. I believe they are missing Sertan though this game, and it is a balancing act for this one because the Chargers, both these teams, excellent. I believe number one and number two in scoring defense.
Mm-hmm.
Chargers still have an excellent defense. So it's going to be up to the offenses to see which one can make that one special play. And and there was talks a couple weeks ago, could Bo Nix surpass Jaden Daniels as offensive rookie of the year because the Commanders were falling a little bit? No chance. No chance. Bo Nix has been doing well this year, and he's someone put the random stat out there that he's about to break. If this keeps going the way it is, he's about to break Michael Vick's yards per carry quarterback rushing record. I think he's averaging almost 10 yards a carry. But other than his running ability, and he's been passing a little bit better, it's still like he did not look great against the Colts. Like the score did not indicate how bad that Broncos offense looked against the Colts. So Bo Nix has just been up and down this year. We've had those valleys, we've had those hills. And now Justin Herbert hasn't been great this year either. Everyone's like, "Oh, he's got this talent of the world. He's going to be a top 5 quarterback." Well, he's never actually shown it. He's such a tease. I hate to say it cuz I love me some Phillip Rivers like I mentioned before, but he's almost just like Phillip Rivers and you got that cannon arm, you got that gunslinger mentality, but for some reason you just can't pull away with these wins. And now Jim Harbaugh's been able to rein it in a little bit more, just pound the rock. It's a Harbaugh thing, just pound that rock, play great defense. And it has definitely helped him out this year, but overall he hasn't been great either. So this game is going to be a telling whose offense is just going to make one more play. I think that's just going to take one more play. And I think that is going to be the Chargers. I do think Bo Nix might make a mistake in this game that will cost them like a field goal or something, and that's what they're going to lose by 3. So I'm going to be taking the Chargers in this one, 13-10 in a really low scoring game.
Okay. Well, I, on the other hand, am looking at the rush defenses for both of these teams, and when you dive into some of that, you start seeing that that yards per play Uh, Denver is number 2 in the league in yards per play, whereas the Chargers are 14th. So one's good, the other one's a little bit better. And that seems to be down the line. The scoring differential is right there. They're both at about 17 and a half points a game that they're giving up. So I certainly see where you're saying that it's going to be a low scoring affair. I think that this will come down to, like you said, just that one extra play. But I think this one extra play is going to be by Cameron Dicker. He is going to hit the field goal that brings the Chargers over the top in this. And it's going to be right in line with their regular scoring margin. This is going to be a 17-13 game. So the so the Chargers will actually beat the spread, but it'll be under the 41 and a half as a total. So that's where I'm going with that one. And then moving right along into Saturday. Well, before we get there, just as a uh, point here uh, for the playoff scenarios, if Denver clinches and they win, they get their playoff berth. If the Chargers win, they get their playoff berth as long as Indy loses and Miami loses. So this has got playoffs written all over this game, and it'll be fun to see who's going to fight to get that clinching spot. But before we get to the next game, uh, we want to just reiterate what our records are for this year of what we have done so far.
Yeah. So I also have Matt's picks. Matt picked the Broncos for that game. But as far as our records go, last week, Ed actually, for the first time since like week 1, had the worst week out of us. He went 3-2. Matt went 4-1, and I had my first undefeated. I went 5-0 in my picks. So yay, there we go. So that puts Matt at 39-33. I'm at 45-30, and Matt and Ed is at 50-28. So I'm catching up.
One game and
One
not
game.
enough weeks at a time.
No, that's no. Unfortunately, I don't know if I'm gonna make this, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. And speaking of one game, we actually have two on Saturday, and I'm going to go off on about this. The NFL needs to just step aside at this point. This is the first weekend of the college football playoff. College plays on Saturday. The NFL does not own Saturday. They own Sunday, they own Monday, they own Thursday. Leave Saturday alone. Get out of the way because this is the first time we're having the college football playoff being played. And here we are. We have the two, I'm going to say the two best games that we have this week in the NFL are being played right over the top of the college football playoff. And I hate it. I hate the fact that I have to make this choice between two different things. What's going to be on my big screen and what's going to be on my phone. I absolutely hate the fact that the NFL thinks that they can trample over the biggest thing that college football has ever seen because that is what because they want to have this weird schedule where they're going to have games on next Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and the whole thing. They need to just get out of the way. But that being said, they're not listening to me. We are going to talk about the games on Saturday because they are the biggest ones to talk about. And the first one up is the Texans and Chiefs. Thaddeus, what are you seeing in this game?
Well, you got the Chiefs, and do we know about Patrick Mahomes' situation as far
If
as
he
injury?
can walk, he'll play.
Okay. Anyway, well, he hasn't been that great this season anyway. Uh, but so we got the backup Carson Wentz. If they need it, Carson Wentz can come in. We have not seen him in a while. He has been a backup the past couple of years, so it would be interesting to see him. He did finish out the last game. So from last week, Patrick Mahomes got hurt. He was considered questionable going into this game. That's that's the big thing. However, I'm just going to say I'm just going to take the Chiefs here because no matter what quarterback is going to be in there, it's up to culture. And the Chiefs just have this monumentally well built culture with Andy Reid. The Texans have just, like many people feared, CJ Stroud has had a real rough sophomore slump. Not real bad, but real rough sophomore slump. And the Texans are basically winning the AFC South by default. And it's not been a great season. I've been saying it's not great a lot of times this episode, and I'm sorry, but it's just not been great. So I'm just gonna take the Chiefs in this one. Just take the culture and the Texans. While they're okay, they've been really inconsistent, losing to teams they shouldn't, and they should lose against the Chiefs in this one. I'm gonna go Chiefs, 20-13.
Okay. Well, so I will start by asking this very simple question. What is the one thing that travels in cold weather?
People.
Defense.
Oh,
Defense travels in cold weather. And where the Texans are winning, not because of CJ Stroud having another phenomenal season, which you just alluded to, isn't above and beyond what he did last year, which if you took last year's CJ Stroud and this year's CJ Stroud and flipped them, you would say that that is tremendous progress. Uh, but to me, I think it's a leveling off because one, Houston is playing a tougher schedule than what they did last year, playing a first place schedule versus a last place schedule. So there's something to be said for that as well. Uh, but Houston's defense, I think, can be stifling enough, especially with a gimpy Patrick Mahomes. And Joe Mixon is really become the all-purpose player that he should have been in Cincinnati. But now he is getting the shot to be that guy, and you've got CJ Stroud playing off of that. Plus, Nico Collins is back, and Tank Dell is doing well. So you've got some pieces there that I think leads me to believe that Houston is going to pull this one out. Yes, Kansas City is undefeated at home. They're 13-1, and they are playing for a home field advantage by winning this game. But I think the Texans want to make the statement that they are in that upper echelon, and this is the game to do it. So that 3.5 point spread that uh, Casey that Houston's getting, they're getting 3.5. Take it. I think the Texans do eke this one out. It doesn't all fall Kansas City's way in the very end, like half of their games have this year. So I will say that uh, that the Texans win 17-15.
okay. And then Matt also took the Texans as well on that. So
Excellent. Excellent. See, great minds think alike. All right. So our afternoon game, our late afternoon game on Saturday is the Steelers and Ravens. Now, with this game, this is a game that we all kind of circled when we saw the schedule come out and said, "Ooh, this is going to be for either for a division, for a playoff berth, for a wild card, for seeding. Something was going to happen with this game." And by golly, is it? Because whichever team wins this game, they're going to be in third position in the playoff race. Doesn't matter what the Texans do. And right now, the Steelers being a game up on the Ravens, if the Ravens win, they take over that spot. If the Steelers win, they win the division. It's for all the marbles, as John Candy would say. So this is a game in which uh, you you just love the slobber knocking mentality of watching these two teams play every year, every time that they play. It is just high drama, physicality, just button heads the whole way through. And that means that where you are going to be coming down to quarterback play. While Russell Wilson has been good, he hasn't been great. While Lamar Jackson has been great, the rest of his team hasn't been as good around him. Because if they were supposed to be that great, they should have already won the division. It's just the way it is. So, as a yards per play, Baltimore is still number one in the league at 6.9. Pittsburgh's only 5. They have to struggle a little bit to get further down the field. Although without the moon balls, it's even tougher. And I think Baltimore's defense is going to defend those moon balls that Russell Wilson likes to throw down the field to Pickens. And it's going to be Baltimore's game. With it being played on the shores of the Chesapeake Bay, if you will. That's that 6.5, 7 point spread, I think, is valid. And I'm going to say that this is going to be a little more lopsided than what people are thinking. This is going to be a 28-13 game.
Okay. Well, whatever the point spread is, just take the under. Just remember, Steelers, Ravens, take the under every time.
At
And
45
it has
and
to
a half,
happen.
you're on.
What?
At 45 and a half, you're on.
Yes, I will take the under. But like you said, you brought up some very good points. George Pickens still did not practice, so I believe he's still out for this game. And you saw the Steelers' offense without Pickens and Russell Wilson throwing that moonball to him. It just did not work. Now it was the Eagles, and the Eagles have a really good defense, but that offense just didn't look the same. And the Ravens, right out of the bye, now we know it's the Giants, but still looked Lamar just throwing it all over the field. They looked excellent. So they came off that bye, rumbled right through the Giants, and now they have a game to take with the ability to take lead to the AFC North. I will also take the Ravens in this game. Like I said, I do think this is going to be another low-scoring game, but the Ravens lost their previous matchup with the Steelers because Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals. He has struggled all season. So this is a big test. Now you think offense? No. You think defense? No. This is a special teams game. This is what happens when you play Ravens Steelers. And Justin Tucker will be kicking himself for this. So if Justin Tucker is elite, if he is still elite, he will bounce back from his previous poor performances this year and make all his field goals. And I'm not doing it because I'm not going to bet on this again. But if he misses a kick or two and that ends up being the factor, Justin Tucker might be washed. So that's the big thing for me this game. I think being him as one of the better kickers in the league, he should bounce back. And with that, I think the Ravens will win this game. But if that doesn't happen, the Steelers are going to take it. Now, another big thing is TJ Watt is also going to be playing injured, I believe. He was a limited participant in practice. So he's not going to be at full health, which is still probably still top 3 defensive player in the league. Let's be real, but it's going to be really hard for the Steelers to overcome this adversity. And I just think the Ravens are going to be a better team. So I'm going to be taking the Ravens by 6, 20-16. And Matt has the Steelers winning this, actually. His own
He
team.
always picked against his team, and
Yeah.
here he is not showing up, and now he's picking his team.
He's trying to he's trying not to jinx it, I guess, or the anti-jinx. I
Yeah,
forgot what it was called.
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, and you know who's trying to get it as far as the NFC East division? That's the Eagles. Just trying to clinch it and see what happens as far as getting that, getting the number one seed away from the Lions. Considering the Lions are a mash unit at this point. So this weekend, so Sunday, the noon kickoff, you've got Eagles and Commanders, and with a win, the Eagles clinch the division. With a win for Washington, they would clinch a playoff berth with a win, but also a Falcons loss and a Rams loss, or a win with a Falcons loss and Seattle loss. Right now, Philadelphia is the best team in football, uh, and they're the healthiest of the best teams in football right now. So I've got to take the Eagles, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Uh, this is going to be another one of those yawners of a game, in my opinion. So we'll probably see a how 27-10 game by the end of this.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a yawner. I do think it's going to be close. The Commanders will try to give this one their all, but don't forget, not only are the Eagles fighting for just to win the division, but to also get that number 1 seed because the Lions finally lost. Their
Mhm.
defense is looking like crap because they've lost like 10 out of their 11 starters. Um, so they're also playing for the number 1 seed, and yeah, they got to keep this one rolling. But like I said, the Commanders will probably give this one their all, and the Commanders are not a bad team. They're just about average, slightly above average. So, yeah, I'm going to also take the Eagles in this one. Not a blowout, but a comfortable win. We get 24-13. And Matt also picked the Eagles to win as well. So we got a full Eagles
Okay,
sweep on this one.
excellent. And the last game we're talking about is going to be uh, the Saints and Green Bay on Monday night. This is going to be the ability for Green Bay to uh, gain a playoff berth with the win, or the Atlanta loss and Rams loss, or the Atlanta loss and Seattle loss. So the same things that would help get Washington in the playoffs if they win are the same things that will help Green Bay get into the playoffs. As long as in any scenario. So I think Green Bay is really starting to roll right now. Now that they've really found their identity behind Josh Jacobs and Jordan Love being able to distribute to that wide receiver core, and Tucker Kraft, he has been up and coming. He is finally realizing his potential at the NFL level, which I have been looking for since they drafted him in the third round a couple of years ago. It's time for him, and Green Bay's definitely going to win this game. I'm not even going to put a score on it because I don't want to uh, over be overconfident in what I say.
Yeah, it almost happened last time with the Dolphins and the Packers, and you gave a crazy score, and I was like, no, simmer down. But anyway, besides the point there, yeah, I'm also going to take the Packers. I mean, the Saints, they've been better under Darren Rizzi, I'd say, but they just don't have a quarterback right now. I think are they still playing Spencer Rattler as
He
their
ended the
starter?
game. he ended the game, even though it was the other kid that started it last week.
Oh yeah, Hayner was his name, Jake
Yeah,
Hayner. Yeah.
Jake Hayner.
So yeah, it just none of the quarterbacks. Derek Carr this year, outside of the first two games, he's been under average. The backups behind him are below average, like worse, like bottom of the barrel. So yeah, I'd expect the Packers to get a comfortable win um, and get a playoff berth. So good for them. Yeah, I'll go with the score 27-13. Oh yeah, and then of course Matt also picked the Packers as well. So it's an
Okay,
easy
so
bet
I'm
for the week.
maintaining my lead in picks
Oh,
as far as that goes.
yeah.
Uh, well, now that we've gone through those, that's about all the time we have for today, everybody. We appreciate you tuning in. Please hit that like and subscribe. Let us know what your predictions are, who you think is going to win Merry Clinchmas this weekend. And until next time, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.